So in this video, we're going to be talking about two challenges to the California handgun roster, and when is the earliest that the handgun roster can be done away with. So let's talk about this. But real quick before we jump into this video, if you think the handgun roster is clearly unconstitutional, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Also, I want to give a shout out to one of the main supporters of this channel, which is USCCA. Through your membership, you get training, education, and self-defense liability protection. So if you carry a firearm, if you have firearms in your home for self-defense, I highly recommend you check out USCCA, and I'll leave a link to them down in the details section. How's it going, everyone? My name is Anthony Miranda. I'm a licensed and practicing attorney in the state of California with an emphasis on Second Amendment rights. I've been part of Second Amendment litigation both at a state level and a national level while serving as a staff attorney with the Firearms Policy Coalition legal team. My goal with these videos is not to provide you any legal advice, but instead to give you greater insight into the inner workings of Second Amendment litigation and help you understand what's currently going on in the battle for our right to keep and bear arms. As I mentioned in the intro, in this video we'll be discussing two cases which seek to eliminate the state of California's handgun roster. The two cases we'll be discussing is Rena v. Bonta and Bolin v. Bonta. A lot of you have been asking for an update on the California handgun roster, and in this video I want to discuss some things which have actually changed in regards to both of these challenges to the handgun roster. Specifically, Bolin v. Bonta will now be the case which we will want to be keeping our eyes on because it has now leapfrogged the Rena v. Bonta case in importance. Bolin now may offer the quickest relief for the California handgun roster to be found unconstitutional. Now, for those not aware with this issue, let me explain real quick. In the state of California, there is something called the Unsafe Handgun Act, which lists a bunch of requirements for a handgun to be deemed safe within the state of California and therefore safe for sale. Some of these requirements include that the handgun be drop safe and also that the handgun have microstamping technology. This law resulted in a list of safe handguns, which is also referred to as the handgun roster. So in the state of California, for example, you have things like a Gen 3 Glock, which is on the handgun roster, but then you also have other handguns like a Gen 4 or Gen 5 Glock, which are not on the handgun roster. However, there are some exemptions from the handgun roster. Mainly people who are police officers are not subject to the handgun roster, so they can buy handguns that are off-roster handguns. There are some other workarounds as well for average people. Mainly, someone can purchase an off-roster handgun on the secondary market from someone who purchased an off-roster handgun legally. And then this structure ultimately essentially leads to insane resale prices. For example, in the state of California, I just recently bought an off-roster handgun, a Glock 43, and it cost me double the traditional price. It was about $1,100. And in other states, you can get that for like $500, but in the state of California, since it's off-roster and you have to get it on the secondary market, it just leads to insane markup prices and people having to pay insane prices to actually get their hands on these firearms. As if this issue of handguns wasn't bad enough in the state of California, the state of California legislature then went ahead and passed AB 2847. Under this law, a new requirement was then added. Now, whenever the state of California adds a new handgun onto the roster, 3 of those older non-compliant handguns must now be removed from the handgun roster. So this put the older generations of handguns at risk as well, of potentially falling off the handgun roster if any new handguns are added on. Then on June 30th, 2022, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed into law AB 1621. AB 1621 amended and added into the law multiple provisions into the penal code, imposing additional significant burdens on the ability of ordinary law-abiding Californians to engage in the lawful self-manufacture or assembly of handguns. Even more concerning, AB 1621 was enacted with an urgency statute, meaning that the provisions of that bill that was passed went into effect immediately. But the state of California did not stop just there. California also passed, and Gavin Newsom signed into law, SB 1327. SB 1327 is something we've talked about on the channel in the past, and that is the new California attorney fee shifting. And the whole goal of that is to actually stop these Second Amendment challenges, to stop the challenges against the California's unconstitutional laws, which actually violate our right to keep and bear arms. This law was passed in California in direct response to the Supreme Court's ruling in the Texas SB 8 decision, and also the Supreme Court's recent ruling in Bruin. Recently, Judge Benitez, or St. Benitez as he's known in California, found that 2 other cases challenging SB 1327 and the whole fee shifting provisions were not moot, and so those cases are proceeding forward in challenging SB 1327. So Rena v. Bonta became a challenge to the Unsafe Handgun Act, the handgun roster, and the implementation of other California firearms restrictions as well, including the whole self-manufacturing provisions that have been passed, and also the attorney's fee shifting provisions. Now, in prior videos when we discussed Rena, I told you that the judge in the case granted the state of California's original motion to dismiss part of the case. The part of the case that the judge originally dismissed had to do with new challenges to the California Unsafe Handgun Act. The court dismissed the Second Amendment challenge to the handgun roster because there was a prior case called Pena, which already was a challenge to the California handgun roster, and in Pena, that case made its way to the Ninth Circuit, where the Ninth Circuit found that the California handgun roster did not violate the Second Amendment. In reaching that determination, they used something called the interest balancing approach. Well, as we all know, the Supreme Court decision in Bruin recently just eliminated the use of that type of analysis. Instead, they affirmed that text as informed by history and tradition is the appropriate type of analysis, and that the two-step approach and interest balancing should never be used in these types of Second Amendment cases. That means that prior Ninth Circuit decision is no longer valid. The change in the analysis then opened up the door for new challenges to the handgun roster using the new standard of text as informed by relevant history and tradition. Because of that, Rena is now proceeding forward as a challenge to the handgun roster, and also a different case was filed known as the Bolin v. Bonta case, and that was filed by the CRPA, the California Rifle and Pistol Association, who do amazing things in the state of California, who are often parts of these big Second Amendment cases, and so they are proceeding forward with a challenge to the handgun roster as well. Now, Rena is the oldest of these two cases, but something has changed procedurally, which actually makes Bolin the case that we should be keeping our eyes on. In Rena, that case, FBC was recently seeking a TRO to stop the enforcement of the self-manufacturing and fee-shifting provisions. However, there was an arrangement with the state of California where they said that they would not go after the whole fee-shifting provision. They would not try to use SB 1327, that they would kind of wave that away. And so ultimately what happened in the Rena case is that the TRO was removed, and then FBC filed a third amended complaint, removing some aspects of that case because the state of California said that they would not pursue various provisions. And then also they added in new arguments to the handgun roster under the Bruin decision by the Supreme Court. Because of the third amended complaint being filed in Rena, that's almost like the Rena case having to start back at square one and just being renewed because the whole complaint was once again changed. But while all that was happening in the Rena case, CRPA in the Bolin case filed for a preliminary injunction against the state of California and the handgun roster. So CRPA in their case are actively seeking to obtain a preliminary injunction to halt the enforcement of the handgun roster, at least while this case is currently making its way through the legal process. Originally, the court had set a hearing on that motion for a preliminary injunction for December 19th, but then some time was extended to give the state of California an opportunity to respond to that motion. So now a hearing is currently set for a preliminary injunction against the California handgun roster, and that is set for January 23rd. That is why I said the Bolin v. Bonta case is now the case that we should be keeping our eyes on and be watching, and that's why it's procedurally kind of leapfrogged the Rena case, because there is a preliminary injunction hearing that is going to happen in January, and that is potentially the soonest that we may see some sort of relief against the unconstitutional law here in the state of California, and potentially get some relief against the handgun roster here in the state of California. So we will definitely be keeping our eyes on these cases, but like I said, I think the Bolin case is the one that we should definitely be watching. For those of you who haven't asked me, that is kind of an update on the California handgun roster. Thank you again to CRPA for their efforts on this issue. And like I say, I always recommend that you donate to CRPA. I think they do amazing things in the state of California. So if you live in California, consider donating to CRPA. And also, if you're interested, check out your local chapter of CRPA. They are all over the place. I'm a board member of my local CRPA chapter, so I always recommend that is another step you can do if you kind of want to get engaged with this fight here in the state of California. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and comment down below and I'll try to answer the best of my ability. Also, if you like this video and like support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, and subscribe. All those things help to fuel the algorithm or fuel Algor's rhythm. It adds fuel to his jet and signals to YouTube that you guys see value in this video and in this type of two-way news. As always, I want to thank everybody who likes, comments, subscribes, who hits the notification bell, who shares these videos. You guys directly impact these videos, impacting this channel, and helping me to reach and educate more people than I could ever do on my own. So as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And never forget, this is with Built by Armed Scholars, and the station will be maintained by Armed Scholars.